All right, let's get right into it. We're talking about a country that, on the surface, well, it seems to have it all. But it's hiding this huge secret in all of its empty space. So what is the real story behind New Zealand's massive uninhabited landscape?
You know, when you picture New Zealand in your head, you probably see this, right? Epic mountain ranges, these crystal clear lakes, and of course the sweeping landscapes made famous as the backdrop for the Lord of the Rings movies. It's a country that's just legendary for its breathtaking beauty.
And it's not just gorgeous, it's incredibly safe. I mean, according to the Global Peace Index, New Zealand is consistently ranked as one of the most peaceful nations on the entire planet. So you've got a high standard of living, a low crime rate, and stunning scenery. Sounds pretty perfect, doesn't it?
Which brings us to the big mystery here. Despite all of that, if you were to look at a population map, you'd see that something like 80% of the country is completely empty. How is it possible that a place so idyllic is also so uninhabited?
To figure this out, we have to travel back in time. And our first clue, the key to starting this whole investigation, is figuring out how people even got to this incredibly remote nation in the first place.
I mean, just think about where it is on a map for a second. New Zealand is one of the most isolated places in the world, thousands of kilometers away from its closest neighbor, Australia. So who were the first people to make that unbelievable journey, and when did they do it?
Well, according to Maori history, the story starts with a fisherman named Kupe. Way back around the year 758 AD, long before any Europeans showed up, he set out across the vast Pacific Ocean, looking for new, rich fishing grounds. And what he stumbled upon was a massive, uninhabited land, full of life. That land was Aotearoa, which we know today as New Zealand.
So for centuries, the Maori people lived there, pretty much in seclusion. But then came the plot twist, the arrival of Europeans. And this would change the course of the island's history forever.
Now, what's really wild about this timeline is just how quickly things happened. After hundreds and hundreds of years of isolation, the first European, Abel Tasman, makes contact in 1642. A little over a century later, Captain James Cook shows up and maps everything, which really opened the floodgates. And it all leads to this one pivotal moment in 1840.
And that moment was the signing of the Treaty of Waitangi. This agreement, this single piece of paper, effectively brought New Zealand under the control of the British Empire. It was a monumental shift in power, in governance, in everything.
At the time that treaty was signed, the Maori population was estimated to be right around 200,000 people. This was a thriving, complex society spread all across the islands. Now, I want you to hold that number in your mind, because what happened next was just catastrophic.
The Maori population just plummeted, and it really came down to two main things. First, Europeans brought over new diseases that the local population had absolutely no immunity to, and it caused widespread devastation. And second, disagreements over who owned the land erupted into a series of brutal wars with the British that went on for 40 years. The impact was just devastating. Only 100 years after the treaty was signed, the Maori population had collapsed from $200,000 all the way down to just 40,000 people. That's an 80% drop in just a few generations. It is an absolutely staggering decline.
So here's the crucial point. While this tragic history explains the dramatic loss of population, it still doesn't fully explain why 80% of the country is still empty today. For that, we get to the big reveal.
See, the biggest clue to New Zealand's emptiness isn't something you can find in history books or old treaties. The answer was there long, long before any people ever arrived.
It's right there. The real secret is in the geography. The mountains, the valleys, the soil of New Zealand, that's what dictates where people can and, more importantly, where they can't live.
Okay, let's look at the South Island to really see what this means. A huge chunk of it is covered by the Southern Alps, this massive mountain range. The terrain is so rugged, so steep, that building basic things like roads is just nearly impossible in a lot of places. And then, on the eastern side of those mountains, you get what's called a rain shadow, which makes the land too dry and infertile for farming. So a huge part of the South Island is, for all intents and purposes, uninhabitable. And that's why most of the population is crowded onto the North Island.
So this unique mix of history and geography has created a really interesting modern puzzle for New Zealand, a country with way too much empty space and not enough people to fill it, leading to some really unexpected problems. So after World War II, the government had a serious population shortage. What they do? They dramatically relaxed their immigration policies. This opened the doors for new people to come, especially from Asia, and it sparked this much-needed population boom.
But because of the geography we just talked about, almost everyone settled in the already populated North Island.
And you can really see the impact of that policy today. Immigrants now make up over a quarter of the entire population. Now, on one hand, this has created a really vibrant multicultural society, but it's also put intense pressure on the few parts of the country where people can actually live.
And here's the direct result of that. With so many people funneled into one small, livable area, the demand for housing has just gone through the roof, but the supply of land is obviously limited. And this has turned Auckland, where a huge chunk of the population lives, into one of the least affordable cities on the entire planet.
So, what's filling up all that empty, fertile land then? Well, it's not people. New Zealand is home to just over 5 million humans, but they are completely outnumbered by nearly 30 million sheep. And that isn't just a funny statistic. It's actually the core of their entire economy. Yeah, that massive livestock population, it fuels an absolute powerhouse of an export industry. In 2019 alone, by shipping out the vast majority of its meat and wool, New Zealand's agriculture sector brought in an incredible $46 billion. So all that empty land we've been talking about, it isn't useless at all. It's the engine of the national economy.
So when you put it all together, New Zealand's story leaves us with this really fascinating idea. It's this powerful reminder that a country's geography, its mountains, its soil, its very location on the globe, it doesn't just make for pretty pictures. It can define everything, from historical tragedies and population patterns to modern-day wealth and its biggest challenges. In New Zealand, the empty space isn't just a void on a map. It's the defining feature of the whole nation.